Hello and welcome. My name is Maren Sakri. I lead demand generation for Evolv Technologies. Thank you for watching. This is our 8th virtual panel in the ThinkCX Digital Leaders Tell All series. Today we are focusing on why companies like Best Buy and Verizon are so successful in 2020. Our digital experts that I will be introducing shortly have selected a handful of companies that we believe have prioritized their innovation on delighting customers and creating frictionless experiences. We've also uploaded a few attachments. Please take a peek at those below. Those are complimentary. We have uploaded a few ebooks, the Digital Marketer's Guide to AI-Powered CRO, and the ThinkCX Retrospect, which also includes references with a summary of quotes and takeaways from prior ThinkCX events. If you have any questions, given the short format, please submit those and we'll follow up after the event via email. We will also distribute the recording via playback. So let's dig in with our panelists. Today we have Brian Poe. He is a user experience strategic consultant. He's worked with CXL Agency, specializing in conversion optimization and analytics, the LASIK Group, a specialty agency within Ogilvy, and managed digital analytics, testing, and optimization at Best Buy. Sam Nazari is the Vice President of Customer Success at Evolv, where he leads the global customer success and solutions engineering teams. Sam works closely with Evolv's customers to ensure they have the training, support, and experimentation roadmap to ensure their success. So with that, I am going to pass it over to Brian and Sam. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Maren. Hi, everyone. Sam here. Thanks for joining. Super excited to have Brian here with me to discuss a few topics related to customer experience strategy. We'll start with diving into our points of view on the differences between testing and optimization, a deep dive into 2 companies that we selected who are doing it well and why, and then a few key takeaways about how your businesses can adopt the same type of mindset and plan an effective CX strategy. So to kick things off, Brian, given your experience with a number of companies, specifically at Best Buy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on your view on testing versus optimization.
But I think it's an interesting question. How do we think about testing and optimization? The reason I think it's interesting is because we start to get into questions like maturity and efficiency and things like that. At a high level, you could say, testing is the process of formal experimentation. It's basically the the individual pieces that make up a larger initiative or program called optimization. And so, at a high level, that makes sense. But I'd also say that, optimization, if you're thinking about developing the maturity in your program around testing, optimization is, it's the next step. It's the evolution of taking your program to the next level. And so recently I'd heard somebody say, you can take the temperature of water, but to optimize is a completely different thing. And I think, well, 1, I like analogies and metaphors, but 2, I think it's really, really appropriate for this conversation. And it hits the nail on the head. You can run experiments, once a year and you're still running tests, right? You can run headline tests and kind of get in a rhythm of, the mechanics of testing. You're still testing, right? As long as you're following the formal process of experimentation. But again, it's about maturing the program. So that's kind of the thing that I want to point out here. And, testing as a whole starts out as, and we're going to talk a little bit about, what it means to kind of evolve beyond, a traditional centralized program into, say, a center of excellence and or a decentralized program here in a bit. But that's also something that, you'll have to wrestle with as your program matures. There's more buy-in, there's more learnings being disseminated, and people are wanting to use, leverage the power of your program. And so as you start to mature, you're going to have to wrestle with questions, right? You're going to have a business sponsor to begin with. Somebody's going to have to say, there's value. We think we can extract value from this program within our business. But as that starts to mature and you have, more resources and you're running more tests and you're disseminating more learnings across your organization, you have to think about, you have to wrestle with big questions, things like, is this program growth oriented, right? Are we hoping to build and grow specific lines within our business? You can take a completely different approach, and that could be, are we hoping to save money with this program? And you can also look at it from an efficiency gain standpoint. And so at a high level, you have to start thinking about what is the purpose of the program, what is our overall goals and metrics associated. And so, so a couple other things that you'll inevitably have to wrestle with is, tracking your program and platform metrics. And what I mean by that is, how fast should we be testing? What does velocity look like for us in our organization? Should we be running 10, 100, 1,000 tests a year? How efficient can we be as we are evolving and maturing the program? And then you'll have to think about, things like, how satisfied are we with our current learning rates, right? So kind of having that overall kind of scorecard and health of the program will be really important as you start to mature. Another thing that I want to point out is, and surprisingly, I don't see enough of this in large organizations, and you're going to talk a little bit about this, Sam, too, is leveraging customer insights, VOC data, user testing data, and other qualitative data points, because all testing programs are going to look at quantitative data, but what is often overlooked is the qualitative supporting data there. And I think even for programs that are maybe a little on the less mature side, this is a low-hanging fruit because it's relatively cheap and fast to gain some of these customer insights. And by using that at the onset of your program and building that into your process, that can add a lot of focus to your program. So you're not just doing one-off, button tests here and headline tests over here. When testing programs start to are first constructed within an organization, it can seem a little bit schizophrenic in that regard. Because you're kind of just testing in different places purely on heuristics. And so bringing that in to really focus in on what the customers want, what those friction points are, what their what their motivations are, those things can add a lot of focus and clarity to your program. And lastly, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in this conversation as well, is around the evolution of your program. And so moving from a centralized sort of gatekeeper program into, say, a center of excellence, in which we'll talk about later, or a decentralized program, that is a natural sort of growing pain that programs often will have to wrestle with as they start to leverage this, the power of the program. So at a high level, again, there's not really a right or wrong answer to this question. But I think the main theme here, and we're going to talk about today, is how to kind of mature your program and think about some of these individual points.
Awesome, and I echo a lot of the points that you made. I think I'll give a more high level answer on my point of view, which is testing to me is more process related versus optimization is outcome focused. And what I mean by that, with testing, it is, as you mentioned, the act of running experiments and the work and mechanics that goes into launching these experiments. Obviously, those tests are outcome focused, where you want to find wins and learnings that you can incorporate into your user experience research. Where when I think about optimization, I think about a goal that has been overarchingly defined for the program, for example, driving growth or cost savings. And then the optimization, the primary optimization metrics that really impact the business have been defined, as well as the additional metrics to understand the impacts on other parts of the business, whether we're looking at sales of different products, attach rate, progression, AOV, et cetera. And the optimization program is really focused on, with those metrics that have been defined, finding and serving the best customer experience across the user journey. And in addition to the program, the tools and the team and the process to execute successfully to find these best experiences, and then incorporating, as you mentioned, Brian, a lot of the data and the learnings that you're getting, both qualitative and quantitative, into that process, and being very, very customer focused. And I think this point ties into the customers that we're going to be talking about, or the companies that we're going to be talking about. And so, when we look at Verizon Wireless, obviously, a lot of this is public information. They beat estimates for third quarter profits, consolidated revenues over 31.5 billion. And a lot of this was fueled by offices and schools continuing to operate virtually despite the pandemic. And if we look at the consumer business, 142,000 net phone additions, 258,000 postpaid smartphone additions. So massive, massive numbers. And again, this ties into our discussion about testing versus optimization, where a few webinars ago, we had the head of optimization join us, where she'd been hired back in 2018 to run testing, optimization, and personalization for a legendary brand like Verizon. And one of the biggest key takeaways was that journey of scaling and building an optimization program when there was effectively a white sheet of paper to start with. So she mentioned her point of view on digital experimentation is an important part of the digital operations, and the goal was to create an experimentation-centric focused program that really was informed by their customers' feedback and how they're reacting to products, offers, and services, and meeting these demands in real time based on constant feedback and updates to the experience. And so when she was mentioning at the beginning, there was a basic setup that was doing testing, but really she was focused on how do we get the team, process, and operation built up from scratch. And she had choices to make. Does she look at building mainstream operations like major players out there running effective A/B testing programs, or do we look at the market and see what advancements have been made in terms of solutions to really solve this problem? And how do you go bold with a very large organization? After doing the research, really the key takeaway here was technology's moved on, solutions in the markets have made advancements, and being thoughtful about the utilization of technology, especially artificial intelligence. So she focused on a new approach with AI-led solutions, building people process around this new approach to optimization that again focuses on the voice of the customer, where you can continue to run A/B tests and multivariate tests, but really it's basically what she said, doing A/B testing on steroids.
Yeah, can you speak to the maturity there? I mean, I'm just thinking back to what I was talking about earlier, right? And that programs will start out centralized to begin with, and then need to shift and evolve as demand increases. Can you talk about the maturity at all of how of the Verizon program there, and was it going from 0 to 60, from no testing to AI? It just seems like a huge leap. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she mentioned that testing was being done. Obviously, they had a solution to execute and run these tests, but really, A/B wasn't enough. It's too slow. They want to get feedback quickly. They want to run as many tests, and executing A/B tests, running them to full statistical significance, and then basically increasing the velocity of A/B tests wasn't enough. So looking for more of an MVT model that would allow them to scale testing and basically speed up the efficiency and learnings into the program that could feed back into continuing to optimize. And so the point of view that she shared, that the optimization program isn't just a tool or a team within the organization that reports out on just how A/B tests are being done, but really how they're achieving digital growth in real time. And one of the key takeaways was it tells you the potential of, if you're willing to embrace technology that's new and invented in the market and really build people and process around a new innovative way to optimize, can lead to significant results. And some of the key points of the program was they've done a phenomenal job, Verizon's done a phenomenal job of bridging the gap of what a sales professional does in a retail store versus what a visitor can do online. Because as you know, figuring out what device, what options, what services, that's a lot of choices for the user to make, and a lot of questions around what do these options mean for me and how do they impact the plan that I select. And this was a result of simplifying the journey and organizing that shopping experience. And we all know, especially in times like today in 2020, where a lot of the folks that used to go in store are now shopping online, and a new user group is being introduced to that more and more. It's more important to make sure that journey is simplified, and you can effectively present a great customer experience to be able to get the user to the goal that they have. They've also done some work around incorporating bundles such as Disney Plus and Hulu Plus, and figured out where in the journey to present some of these offers. And again, it's all about being close to the customers, meeting them where they want to be met, and then they've seen digital growth as a result of increase in orders and also an increase in NPS. And so the key takeaway for me from the case of Verizon, as their head of optimization had mentioned, was being very, very customer focused, incorporating feedback into your CX strategy, being bold, doing your research, what advancements have been made, carving your own path versus going with what everyone else is doing. Brian, I know you worked at Best Buy for a number of years. I'd love for you to give your point of view on how Best Buy has evolved over the years in terms of the evolution of the testing program as well as the offerings.
Yeah, Best Buy, I think, is an interesting business. Again, I'm a former Best Buy employee, and so I've got to experience the culture firsthand. And we talked about customer data and VOC, and Best Buy really believes in the power of customer research, and we'll talk about this. Before I start going in here, I'll preface too, right? I mean, where Best Buy isn't different than Target and Home Depot and Walmart, and I won't mention Amazon too many times because I'm tired of hearing about Amazon, but they're really no different in terms of sales growth this year, in terms of e-com sales, right? For obvious reasons in that regard. But I want to dig in a little bit and provide a point of view on why I think they're also as being, as successful as they have been this year. Start off, Q2 online sales were up 242%. Sales at stores also grew 5.8% in Q2. And again, obviously that is because of COVID. Shifts in shopping behaviors have shifted online. And so, Best Buy and Target and Home Depot, they're all pivoting overnight to curbside pickup. And that is a direct result. And COVID is going to get, it's going to steal sort of the limelight in news publications right now. I do think that there are potentially some other longer term factors here, which I'll get to in a moment. So they've made some improvements to things like their supply chain, right? But that's table stakes in order to compete with Amazon. So they've increased their, reduced their shipping time by 3 days. They most recently actually have announced that they're turning a quarter of their stores into store hubs. So Best Buy has always known the relationship, you can say omni-channel, right? But the relationship that e-com has with their brick and mortar stores. And so, when you buy a new TV or an entertainment system, you go to the store to pick it up, you're likely to go in and buy new cables or buy something else. So they understand the value of those assets and have for a long time. 60% of Best Buy online orders or they're picked up in store by curbside pickup, or they're shipped from them. So they're not about less stores and following the path of Amazon, right? They're actually about more stores. They understand that, even in the era of COVID, they're all betting, not just Best Buy, but Target, and they're all betting on that, more of the overall company sales will start to shift to online. And so they need to bridge that gap and provide points of contact with their customers and frankly, get their product to them faster. Another thing, a quick sort of anecdotal data point here is that, they're also leveraging other third-party locations, places like FedEx's and UPS's. So they've got over 16,000 third-party locations that they're networking with to, again, double down on that sort of strategy and getting product to their customers faster. So that, again, those are all sort of table stakes, and I think those are things that they should be doing. The point that I want to talk about here really quick is that, again, this has been more of a longer term play. It's not something that you hear a lot about. It certainly is not going to get the PR that COVID has. But in 2013, they started an initiative called Renew Blue. In 2018, that kind of evolved and morphed into what they called Build the New Blue. And the details there really aren't important for this conversation, other than the fact that at the core, what that really means is that they're committing themselves to building a deeper relationship with customers. So rather than it being a one-off relationship, aka a transactional relationship, you buy a product, you leave, and hopefully you come back, they are building in the customer journey up front. So, they're adding on things. You've heard of Geek Squad. They've been around for a long time, but they've added on things like in-home advisors, which are basically, it's a consultant service where they will go to your home and help you as a potential customer build the entertainment experience that fits into the environment of your home. So they're doing things like that to add on to the pre-sale relationship piece, right? They also have Magnolia system designers, and they're building on and have things like total tech support, which is the latter piece of this, right? Which is building on the support and the relationship building and the tech support after you've bought a computer or a complicated piece of technology that you need service. So they're thinking about the end-to-end relationship and journey there. And to me, that's the win, really, is the long-term play and their continual thought about the customer and how they can increase their touch points and interactions with the customer across the entire journey.
Awesome. I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the pain points that you were faced with when you were evolving your testing and optimization program.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One, as I mentioned, they're very customer centric. I think they were sort of on the onset or kind of spearheading this notion that testing doesn't have to live on a digital analytics team, right? It can, I just talked to a customer that the person's got a content background, right? So content folks are now leading up optimization programs. At Best Buy, the program shifted and it became an extension to their customer research team. And so, a team that's thinking about the big problems 3 to 5 years from now. What are the things that we want to solve? What are the customer friction points that we want to figure out? And so the testing team became sort of the quantitative extension or arm of that larger initiative. And I think that was a really strategic move on their part. I think super smart. The other is that, I mentioned efficiency earlier. You've got to think about testing efficiency and what is how efficient can you be as a program, and what is test velocity, right? And frankly, we had a homegrown solution that because of a number of reasons made us very inefficient. We weren't able to get insights out to our business partners and stakeholders fast enough. So we went to market and looked for another solution to help with that. But the other piece of that, the other reason why we did that was because we were moving away. We had outgrown what was called what we are referring to here as a centralization, or a centralized program, and moving to, in Best Buy's case, more of a center of excellence. And what I mean by that is putting the power in the hands of your product and marketing teams to run tests on their own. It doesn't mean that people can go rogue. There are, of course, processes that need to be put in place, but it freed up time for the Center of Excellence team, who are looked at as the subject matter experts around the tools and the process and the statistics, to run more complicated tests, and again, put more of that, disseminate more of that power into product and marketing teams. So we were certainly going through some growing pains, but that's a couple examples.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've worked with a number of companies at different stages of, being in the centralized mode and going into more of a decentralized organization in terms of testing. And what I think is really interesting about that is what I hear from the business leaders that I've worked with in the past was a lot of the execution of the tests, being done by the centralized team. Sometimes their products and the tests that they want to run weren't prioritized as other businesses within the organization that had the most impact would be able to increase their test velocity. And the interesting thing is these business leaders have their own growth targets that they need to hit, and going into this more of a decentralized fashion allowed them to scale up their organization in terms of testing to be able to hit their growth targets. And I've seen that work really, really well. And it's interesting to see that evolution from more of a centralized to a decentralized model. I know we're trying to wrap up, but I wanted to at least have a few takeaways for the viewers here on how their businesses can adopt the same mindsets, a plan and effective strategy. Brian, if you could sum up some of the key takeaways from your perspective, that'd be great.
I think it's easy on the onset of sort of early success to say, if you've got massive gains or success early on in your program, that you're sort of setting the bar, the expectation that that your program needs to continue to hit home runs, right? And one of the takeaways that I want to bring up here, because recently had a conversation with a client that I think had that kind of mindset, and I think we can kind of point back to both Verizon's case, really, and the Best Buy example here, is that it's about base hits. If I were to go with the baseball analogy there, the home runs, it's about small wins. Really, to sustain a testing or an optimization program, you've got to be in it for the long haul. And I think in order to kind of focus in on those small wins, you have to, and not get discouraged by, frankly, the high number of losers, if you will, losses in tests, because I think that there's learnings that you can grab from both winners and losers there. But to not get discouraged, you have to, and again, going back to the customer data point there, right? Include that in your program. If you're a large organization and other teams producing customer strategy and data insights, bring that into your program. Find them, introduce that, because it's going to provide clarity to your program. If you're a small organization or a small new program, start off with that, because it's going to provide a lot of focus and clarity early on, and I think you'll get to the next level a little faster.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I echo that. I think being customer obsessed, and I hear this all the time, that we're customer obsessed, et cetera, with organizations we work with. And it's really be customer obsessed, but make sure all of that feedback that you're getting from the VOC, whether it's test results, whether it's surveys, et cetera, and make sure that you're incorporating that into your strategy, into your ideation, and then you're continuously learning from each iteration that you're going through. I think the other piece for me is don't be afraid to be bold. Research what tools and solutions there are on the market, and pave your own path to driving digital growth.
Do we have time for maybe one more point?
Go for it.
Cool. The other thing, because I know we've talked a little bit about centralization and decentralization of programs. I just want to make sure that we're really clear here. Like, decentralized is not the model that fits for every culture. You have to kind of look internally and think about what works for you. If you guys haven't read, I like to reference this book once in a while. I don't think it's showing up. It's called Experimentation Works. A gentleman by the name of Stephen Tomke from Harvard wrote a lot about the culture of programs for some really large organizations. And, for bookings, for example, bookings.com, they run 25,000 experiments a year. Does that mean that's not necessarily the benchmark that every company should be shooting for, right? But they are a completely decentralized program, meaning that they've got 1,800 technology and product people, and 75% of them are using their program or their testing platform on a regular basis. So that's a massive shift for most organizations. They're a big company and they're running a lot of experiments, but it's also culturally ingrained for them. I just want to make sure that we're not setting false expectations that everybody should be kind of chasing that. The point is that you will outgrow a centralized program at some point if you are maturing, and you just have to look for the model that works for your business.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure. Please check out Think CX episodes 1 through 7 at evolv.ai. And if you have any questions for us or would like to talk about your optimization program, please email us at contact@evolv.ai. Thank you all. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.